So I'm going to invite the panelists to leave the floor, and I'll keep three of them, Brian, Rizlan, and Lubna. So, as promised, we're going to start right now. To introduce myself shortly, I'm David Cordobes. I'm the head of the Youth and Trade program at the International Trade Center. I define myself as French for rugby and Spanish for football. I have both nationalities, and of course for cricket it's Sri Lanka. Now on this session the point is to see how to switch in line with what was said just before. For young entrepreneurs, what does it take to switch from the idea to market? So the point of this session would be basically to give you some tips, methods, tools, resources that would give you a feel of what does it take to switch from this business idea to market. Of course, it doesn't have the pretension to put in 30 minutes something that would take a master to go through this journey. But the point here is to have a little bit of, I don't like the word theory, but in a way it's to showcase these kind of things, but also to have a life experience, and that's why I'm taking all the juice of those young entrepreneurs in order to share with us at the end of this short presentation some testimony about their successes, failures, experience, and of course the crispy anecdotes we could get out of them. So to join me in this presentation, we're going to have as well Lubna Shaban. Oh, nice t-shirt. That's cool. Well, I look very serious with my tie now. Lubna, she's going as well to drive us through this presentation. So how does it work? Yeah. In order to introduce several concepts and tools about the business idea, the planning, the funding. We talked about that just before, but just to give you some resources about those different topics. Then I'll take the floor on going international, and again there, well, what does it take to connect to value chains, and what are the tools and resources that are available today, and particularly at the ITC level. And as I said, the testimony of our two guests today. And also, if we have time, I know we're running really late, but a bit of exchange with the audience in order to close this first day of the WEDF. So, I guess, Lubna, you're on stage.
Hi, okay. Yes, I got into trainer mode, EA trainer mode. So as David said, we're not going to do the master's degree today, but what I wanted to do was share with you, and especially for the young entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs in the room, where you can find different resources which address most of the things that we have actually already talked about. So thanks to the panelists, because actually you've pretty much covered quite a few of those points. I don't know if the PowerPoint is there it is, okay. All right, so when we talk about entrepreneurship, in the last few years, I think there's been, and correct me if I'm wrong, this glamour that's been associated with entrepreneurship. You want to get rich, you want to be famous, become an entrepreneur. And of course, if you look at the three gentlemen there, you have Mr. Ortega, Mr. Jobs, Mr. Murthy. What do they have in common? Yes, sure, they're rich. Yes, sure, they're famous. Yes, they're successful. But as we talked about in the panel, where they all started was they had an idea, and that idea was born from a problem that they saw and a solution that they created, a gap that they wanted to fulfill. And at the end of the day, that's what entrepreneurship is. Whether you want to build an app that's going to take over the world, or you're going to open a shoe store in your local community, that's you solving a problem, and that's where entrepreneurship comes in. So entrepreneurship, is it for everyone? I don't know. It's very hard. Agreed? Yeah, it's hard. And there are a lot of things that stand in the way of an entrepreneur reaching that success. And especially a young entrepreneur, because young entrepreneurs start from a very different place. Normally, they don't have the experience that an older entrepreneur, they don't have the savings, they don't have the experience, they're starting to fail. So, it could be anything from, a lack of focus. It could be anything from, as the gentleman mentioned, not having a good team. It could be anything from not having the right strategy. So what we're trying to do is to say, okay, we know that these hurdles come. We know they're specifically difficult for young entrepreneurs. So how do we already start to address them? And that's where sort of YEI and ITC have tried to build a resource pool and a community that helps young entrepreneurs through this difficult journey. We had a nice idea, an idea, to have the creative juices flowing in the room. And I would still encourage you to do it. If you have a business idea, why not jot it down? And if we do have time, then maybe we can sort of throw it around in the room for discussion, or else just come see us afterwards and we're happy to talk about it. But it was this exercise to talk about what is an idea and where does it come from? And we covered that. We covered that in the panel to say it's a solution to a problem. And then how do you make that idea go from being an idea to actually being a plan? And that's where you have this idea, this notion of test the idea, prototype the idea, have the minimum value proposition, check what is it that people really want? Is it what the market is asking for? At the YEI community, you can find some tools which can help you think through that process and understand what is involved in that process. We have our blog as well, and also the Intrasen Academy, you can also find some resources. Now, one of these resources, very well known, is the Business Model Canvas. This one is a sort of a nutshell of all the things you should sort of think about when creating the plan for from taking your idea into a business. It covers things like the business problem, the solution, the value proposition, which the panelists had talked about, the customer segment. Who is this business helping? What's the added value? What are the resources and partners that you need? What are the different channels that you're going to use? And the costs, which, of course, every business is going to have costs, but also the revenue. How are you going to make the money? So what we did here was an example for Uber. This is not there, but a canvas. We sort of recreated it with the Uber example. So I'll go through it super quick. Of course, the problem, it starts with the problem and the solution. So they saw a problem with being able to get the taxis. I used Uber because I understand, well, I used it here in Sri Lanka, so I think it's quite well known. So the solution to the problem of taxi shortages, let's say, or short lead times, is the online app, which we all know. The value proposition is two-sided, so it's for users, for drivers, it's convenient, it's cashless payments and so on. When you talk about the customer segments, who is it focusing on? Is it, so they have both the users and the drivers. And, we can also share the slide afterwards so you can have a look and sort of examine that some more. So great, you have your idea, you have your plan, you've tested it, you've prototyped it, you've gone through the dust, smoke that we mentioned earlier. Now what? Money, right? So this is a problem that all entrepreneurs have, and especially young entrepreneurs. Access to finance is a big problem. We did touch on the panel the idea of, do you really need financing? Can you manage without? Are you able to get it? So I think here, just to introduce you very briefly to the different types of funding that is available. Family and friends, I think this is the example that was given to us earlier. Also the working relations, so I guess your working relations were also your friends. Business angels, these are the people who invest in very early stage ideas, usually from their own pocket. you have the venture capitalists. They're the ones who give money in return for ownership, well, as do angels, but normally further down the line. And of course, you've got banks and microfinance institutions and other sort of traditional lending bodies. All right, so one of the most important things, and I think especially for young entrepreneurs, is this idea of network. It's having the support system. And not many entrepreneurs have that. It depends, of course, on the country. So there are two things that we always talk about as being really crucial to young entrepreneurs. One is mentorship, being guided and being supported by someone who's been there, done that, someone who understands the industry, someone who can not only provide you technical support, but also moral support. And I think that's something that really, yes, that is very important. And the other thing that we talk about is the network of other entrepreneurs. So meeting your peers who are also having these maybe the same issues as you. And that's what we also try to do with the Yay community. And we have a platform or a community where you can meet coaches, but also where you can meet your other entrepreneurs, other young entrepreneurs, possibly from the same sector or who have also gone through the same experiences, but from also different countries. So this idea of networks. Over to you.
Thank you, Lubna. Actually, it's true that the network is important, and as part of the bottlenecks to internationalization for youth-owned SMEs, it's one of the issues that was identified in the SME Competitiveness Outlook last year in 2015. Now, you know, I'm going to be the advocate for internationalization, and not because I'm at ITC, but because many reports, studies show that going international makes totally sense. And I'm just going to quote The Economist, you know, the newspaper, the magazine The Economist. It was last week. There was a special report on globalization, which is seen as many people like evil, no? And they were saying exporting firms in all countries and across a variety of industries are more productive, grow faster, and pay higher wages than non-exporting firms. And that's confirmed as well on the SME Competitiveness Outlook, and maybe the Economist took it from the SMECO actually, but we'll check. Of course, when you are a young entrepreneur and you want to go at the international level, at the international scale, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will go for export directly. For example, it can be also connected to international value chains. For example, from my previous life before ITC, I was part of a company that was providing consulting services to Airbus, the famous aircraft manufacturer. I was connected to Airbus like 100% with all my business. So I was kind of IBC connected. But in a way, I was still in the same city with the same employees and trying to grow. But this business model was completely integrated into Airbus model. Now, when we talk about the other side of the coin, and I mentioned a couple of bottlenecks, we identify that youth-owned SMEs, when they want to go international, and that's when we talk about when we talk to institutions as well. And I'm looking at Morocco; they know this problem. The limited access to finance, of course, is one thing, but we could see as well the limited access to market information, which is something that comes not only as a top priority for young entrepreneurs, but as a top priority for any SME that wants to export. And that comes in many reports. Also, what we could notice is the fact that they lack sometimes the trade support, the trade support institution, their support in terms of accompanying them to the internationalization and the trade-related skills. And when we talk about some trade-related issues or technicalities about trade, youth-owned SMEs, most of the time, they don't get a good grasp of those issues. So here, I've just produced another canvas with the team in ITC. It's a fake company, so it's not Uber or any of those companies, but just to make the point of a company which is called Sunfood and wants to export dried fruits and vegetables. And exporting dried fruits and vegetables, in order to go at the international level, of course, there are many opportunities for this kind of product, but also many constraints. And it can be from the logistical point of view, but before that, the market information, who is importing dried fruits and vegetables, who are the buyers of these kind of fruits, shall I go up to the value chain or shall I go through a wholesaler, as well as for example, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So there are many issues, and this is a product-related company that when you go to at the international level, or if you want to go at the international level, you have to face those kind of issues. So in order to tackle these issues, ITC, we provide several tools and resources that address partially, and in the case of market information, we have robust tools on that, those issues. For example, just to mention a couple of ones, TradeMap, some of you might already know, but TradeMap is part of the trade intelligence tool suite that ITC has, and it allows any user to get a better grasp of trade flows, who is importing, which country, and what kind of product. Is it dried, is it fresh, or any other product from the harmonized system. And TradeMap, I would say it's the first step in terms of market investigation. And in order to assess market access, we have another tool which is called Market Access Map that allows you to get a better grasp of duties, tax, import tax, but also non-tariff measures, which are more and more critical today in international trade. I'll make a quick teaser on another tool, which is Standards Map, which is much more towards private standards, because tomorrow there will be a full presentation on this tool, but it's part of the suite of trade intelligence tools that ITC provides in order to tackle the problem of market information. As part of the Youth and Trade program, we developed a toolkit. I won't mention all the toolkit because it's related to different stakeholders, but just to focus on two. First, the online training, that was some modules that were developed through the SME Trade Academy. You have a wonderful booth outside with Raphael Dar, my colleague, who is heading the e-learning platform at ITC. And through this platform, as part of the Youth and Trade program, we develop courses that are targeted specifically to youth. I'm talking about taking the entrepreneurship route, for example, that would start at the end of October. So please register. It's free of charge. You just have to register and that's it. Considering export markets, it's upcoming, and the same for another course which we find interesting. It's about engaging with the diaspora to trade. I know there's a lot of, there's a big diaspora, Sri Lankan diaspora in other markets, and most of the time it's an interesting market for a more national-oriented product, for example. And I'm looking again to the Moroccans because I know that they tap into a lot of the diaspora abroad, in France, in Spain, in Germany. And this is an important market as well to consider. So we developed these modules. There are many others, but it's part of the package of the SME Trade Academy. Now, quickly, in terms of institutions, sorry, my question was completely naive before. I didn't want to turn red because Rizlan told me you supported us. It was not the point. But of course, the ITC, from the institutional point of view, we also provide a service which is called the Trade Accelerator, which goes beyond training. It's about setting up an ecosystem of support, such as coaching and also support on market information, getting access to e-commerce, getting access to those platforms as well, and also facilitating access to finance. So this toolkit is not directly targeted to SMEs, but via institutions, we provide this kind of service. We discussed a bit on this with EDB some months ago, so we hope that also this kind of program could operate in Sri Lanka. Now, just a quick word on going digital. I mean, they made the point before about how important it is to go for an SME to go at the digital level, to be e-oriented. And just to flag a study that was made by one of our partners, eBay. They studied in developing countries online businesses in 2014, and Chile, Peru, etc., and compared businesses that are not digital. and the results are really striking. I mean, over 95% of those that are digital engage in exporting. Average number of international markets reached in more than 30, and 60 to 80% of new businesses analyzed survive their first year, which is critical for an SME. And the respective figure for traditional exporters, I mean non-E, is around 30 to 50%. So I won't go into the detail of the e-solution portfolio of ITC, sorry Marcos, but what I can tell you is that there are resources on the website that, particularly a publication I would like to flag. It's bringing SMEs onto the e-commerce highway. It's a very useful manual and quite detailed in terms of how to go digital, what are the constraints, but what are also the opportunities. Just to sum up, in terms of resources and sources, actually I'm like a liar because we're getting to the end of the 30 minutes. But just to sum up, we have all these sources, whether on the CYFI level and the ITC. But the point I want to make is basically use those resources. They are free of charge. You just have to register. And also make sure that you connect with us in order to get a better grasp if you have any question, of course. Now, I would say we only have time for one question, Rizlan and Brian. Basically, I wanted Rizlan and Brian to be on stage in order to share with us a testimony about this journey of switching from the business idea to the market. If you had to share one thing, one advice to those young people that are in the room, what would you say?
If I have to
Short.
share one advice, I would tell them, if you have a great idea, just test it and go ahead. I'm going to give them a simple example. On that event, the Hub Africa 2015, I had the idea. I went back home, I was questioning some CEOs that I know if they have the same issue as me, and they said yes. So I figured out that there is a real problem. So I realized the first version of the application. On the Hub Africa 2016, 1 year later, I was the prize winning of the Young Entrepreneur of the Year in Africa because of this application. So that day I was like, what is the risk of not taking the risk? Because so many people are scared, are afraid of taking the risk. But the risk of not taking this risk is failure 100%. And the probability of success is 0%. But when you really take the risk and you take the well-calculated risk, you have a big probability to be a successful entrepreneur. So don't be afraid, don't be scared, just do things properly and jump in the sea.
Go for it, that's the message. Brian.
So if I were to give a suggestion, probably would be something along those lines. So I will go to the second best suggestion I can give. So imagine you did exactly what she suggested and you started a business and things are going well. When you are starting to see the traction, don't be scared of trusting other people to come on board and work with you toward that goal. I've seen many entrepreneurs and most of the businesses that stay SMEs is because they end up fighting against one bottleneck, which is the bottleneck that no entrepreneur can win against, which is themselves. So at the end of the day, you only have 24 hours in the day, and you always know how you would like to do things. Always keep in mind that although you may be thinking I can do it better, I can do it faster, I can do it whatever, having other people on board and trusting them and making them independent and letting them choose on their own is the only thing that will make you grow.
Thank you. Thanks a million. Sorry, I would have liked to make it longer, but for time constraints, we cannot, unfortunately, but I'm sure people in the room will get you after the panel. We came up with those 5Gs with Lubna. It's something that is not in marketing books or any courses. We thought about the 4Ps at the beginning, but it was more classic. So that's our advice as well. It's the 5Gs. It's get a plan. That's important, I think. We mentioned that many times. Get information. That's the trade information background I have. But turn this information into actions. Information on your desk. That's completely useless. So turn this into action. That's important. Get a mentor and resources for that. Get a mentor. I think it's important. I can tell you that thanks to my first mentor, I could close my first deal in the company where I was working for. If not, I think I would have resigned. So a mentor is really important to turn down your expectation, but also to push you if it's necessary. And of course, I can't close without saying go to international markets, either connected to value chains, exporting your product, having a C2B, B2C, B2B approach, but consider international, go international. I think that's one of the best things to do. And of course, be connected, be digital. We made the point today in the panel, we made it the point again with those entrepreneurs. You saw the potential of the IE dimension, constraints, challenges, but of course, so many opportunities that it's a must now. We can have a time, we can take 5 minutes to whether get a business idea, as we suggested at the beginning of this presentation, someone who would like to talk, to share a business idea. Of course, we won't steal away this business idea. We'll make sure it's IP protected. Or if you have any question to me, to the entrepreneurs, to Lubna, please feel free. We still have 5 minutes before closing. Yes, sir. And if I may ask, short questions.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Bhavin from India. My question to the panel is, one thing I found missing in that slide was a niche one for financing was crowdfunding. How important do you think that in this world of startups blooming and all, this crowdfunding is important? Because I have an idea of channelizing this crowdfunding into India, but Indian law says that you cannot do it. There is a catch where we cannot promote for promoters, investors and all. So what do you think of this idea of crowdfunding? You have ever thought of that getting in early days? Did you ever think of getting funding, something like that?
Thank you. We can take another question or comment or business idea. Nope. Yes, sir. With the red tie. You got a mic just behind you.
Yeah. All this time you all shared your success stories with us. But any business, I'm sure, there are ups and downs, drawbacks. So what sort of drawbacks can you share? What sort of drawbacks you all confronted with and how you all overcame?
Thank you. Drawbacks and crowdfunding. Who wants to start? I would be curious to hear your views on crowdfunding because that's trendy, it's catchy, it's quite growing. We see with KissKissBank, I think, and other platforms. Do you see that as a good source of funding to kickstart your business? Crowdfunding.
Sure. So I'll start with crowdfunding, and I think it's a good solution. I think it is a good solution, especially for kind of businesses that have an impact on consumers, because those are the people that tend to relate more with that crowdfunding. So, for instance, I've rarely seen crowdfunding being successful for a B2B or kind of any trading business or large industrial stuff, while I've seen crowdfunding being very successful when you're trying to do B2C products that will catch the eye of the average consumer. So it is probably an area where there is a lot of potential. And when it got started in the US, if I'm not wrong, it was not legal in the US either. So the regulation realized, hey, they're doing something illegal. Should we arrest them or should we allow them? And apparently they said, let's allow them. So not suggesting anything about India. I don't know what are the consequences, but that's what happened in the US.
Any bad experience? That was the other question.
Yeah, should I touch on the other one as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll get ahead and do the other one as well. So yes, we got, of course, a bunch of bad experiences, and I'll share one that almost killed us. So when we raised money in the very beginning, we raised a little amount, $700,000, and we started trying to get kind of partners to bring their clients into our platform. We didn't realize banks were the right answer for us yet. So it took us a few months of going around to try to figure out who was the channel that would have worked out for us. And so when we realized it was banks, more than half of our money was gone, and we were still looking around. And at a certain point, we got a bank to say yes. It was the largest bank in the country. And they said, yes, we're going to do it. And that was November. We said, okay, we're good. It's a large deal. It was a 5 million euros deal per year. So very sizable considering that we had 20K of revenues at the time. So it was our kind of leap to really get the initial scale we needed. So we had money until March, and then we started dealing with the legal, the compliance, all the kind of bureaucracies that are, say, integral part of a bank today. And days and weeks and months started passing by. And so we got to mid-March when the bank still said, yes, we want to do it, but we didn't have the contract nor the payment yet. So we managed to get the contract, and we were with $5,000 in the bank. And so we really faced a situation where we had 5 million coming in and no money in the bank to pay the employees. And that could have easily killed us. So what I want to share as a moral of that story is, first of all, when you start, you not always know where you're going to end up. You can figure it out along the way. And also, never underestimate the fact that if you work, especially on a B2B scale, it will take much longer to execute stuff than you would expect. Normally, people would say, yes, you have a contract, they sign it the day after you get the money. Well, not exactly. So we were able to get the money to sustain our operation through a third-party funding. So we managed to survive that one. But kind of as you are growing with a startup, you are doing things very quickly, and you expect organizations around you to move as quickly as you do. And that is often a very wrong assumption, and that is the small story I wanted to share.
Thank you, Brian. Maybe a last reaction on crowdfunding before we close? Or Rizlan, crowdfunding? No, you don't want to go for crowdfunding. Okay. A quick one, yeah?
Okay, very briefly, I mean, for all the different types of fundraising, there's pros and cons. Crowdfunding is the same. The pros would be that you get the word out, it's a way of marketing, it's a way, of course, of receiving funds, but it really depends on the country as well, how big the pool is that you have to draw from. So my question to you would be, when was the last time you contributed to a crowdfund campaign? So it really depends. And pros and cons for all. And I would say just try it out.
Yeah. Okay, thanks a million. Sorry, we've been a bit longer than expected. We thank you a lot for your patience, for being here tonight with us. Two last announcements. First of all, I would like to thank the panelists, the entrepreneurs, and Child Youth Finance International with Lubna. Also, special thanks to Communication and Events team, to Enterprise Competitiveness, Sebastian Ioannidis, my colleagues who helped me to develop this presentation, and I couldn't stop by saying a big thank to Madhu Fernando. She's somewhere in the room. She's my colleague. She's a Sri Lankan colleague working in the Youth and Trade program. And I mean, I couldn't do this program without her, so I wanted to have a special thank to her tonight.